Have you ever found yourself questioning whether something really happened the way you remember it? Have you been in a conversation where someone made you feel crazy for trusting your own memory? Have you ever left an interaction feeling confused about what's real and what isn't? If so, you may have experienced gaslighting, one of the most insidious and dangerous forms of psychological manipulation known to psychology. Named after a 1944 film where a husband systematically drives his wife to question her sanity, gaslighting is a technique used to make victims doubt their own perception of reality. But here's what makes gaslighting so terrifying. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a gradual erosion of your confidence in your own mind, so subtle that by the time you realize what's happening, you may already be questioning whether you can trust your own thoughts and memories. Today I'm going to break down exactly how gaslighting works, why it's so effective, and most importantly, how to recognize it before it takes control of your life. We'll explore the specific tactics manipulators use, examine how gaslighting operates in relationships, workplaces, and even politics, and give you the tools to protect yourself from having your reality twisted by others. By the end of this video, you'll understand why gaslighting is considered psychological warfare and how to build immunity against one of manipulation's most powerful weapons. Let's start by understanding what gaslighting actually is, because the term has become so overused that we've lost sight of its true meaning. Gaslighting isn't just lying or disagreeing with someone. It's not simply having a different perspective or remembering events differently. True gaslighting is a systematic pattern of behavior designed to make the victim question their own sanity, memory, and perception of reality. The goal of gaslighting isn't to win an argument or even to get something specific from the victim. The goal is to destabilize their sense of reality so completely that they become dependent on the gaslighter to tell them what's real and what isn't. It's about gaining total psychological control by destroying the victim's confidence in their own mind. This is what makes gaslighting so much more dangerous than other forms of manipulation. When someone lies to you, you still know what you experienced. When someone gaslights you, they make you doubt whether your experience was even real in the first place. The process typically follows a predictable pattern. First, the gaslighter establishes themselves as an authority on reality. They present themselves as having superior memory, better judgment, or more reliable perceptions than the victim. They often do this by being right about small, verifiable things early in the relationship, building credibility that they'll later exploit. Next, they begin introducing small distortions. They might slightly misremember a conversation in their favor, deny saying something they clearly said, or insist that events happened differently than the victim remembers. Each individual distortion is minor enough that it doesn't seem worth fighting about, but collectively they begin to erode the victim's confidence in their own memory. Then comes the escalation. The gaslighter starts questioning not just specific memories, but the victim's ability to perceive reality accurately. They might say things like, "You're being too sensitive," "You're imagining things," "That never happened," or "You're remembering it wrong again." They frame the victim's accurate perceptions as evidence of mental instability or emotional dysfunction. Finally, the victim begins to internalize doubt about their own mind. They start second-guessing their memories, their perceptions, and their emotional reactions. They become increasingly dependent on the gaslighter to validate their experiences and tell them what's real. At this point, the gaslighter has achieved complete psychological control. Now let's examine the specific tactics gaslighters use to distort reality. Understanding these techniques is crucial because they often operate below the level of conscious awareness. The first tactic is memory manipulation. Gaslighters are masters at rewriting history in subtle ways. They might say, "You agreed to this last week, remember?" when you never agreed to anything. Or they'll insist you said something you never said, describing it in convincing detail. They're not just lying. They're trying to implant false memories and make you doubt your recollection of actual events. They often use confident, specific details to make their false version of events seem more credible than your actual memory. They might say, "We were standing in the kitchen by the coffee maker. You were wearing your blue shirt, and you specifically said you didn't mind if I spent the money." The specificity makes their lie seem more real than your accurate but less detailed memory. The second tactic is emotional invalidation. Gaslighters consistently tell victims that their emotional reactions are inappropriate, excessive, or based on misunderstandings. They say things like, "You're overreacting," "You're being dramatic," "You're too sensitive," or "You're taking this the wrong way." This trains victims to doubt not just their memories, but their emotional responses to those memories. Over time, victims learn to suppress their natural emotional reactions because they've been convinced that their feelings can't be trusted. This makes them even more vulnerable to manipulation because they lose access to the emotional warning signals that would normally alert them to mistreatment. The third tactic is reality denial. Gaslighters flatly deny things that obviously happened, often with such confidence that victims begin to question their own perceptions. They might deny making a promise they clearly made, insist they never said something they obviously said, or claim events didn't happen when there's clear evidence they did. What makes this so effective is that most people can't comprehend someone lying so boldly about easily verifiable facts. We assume that people wouldn't deny obvious reality unless we were somehow mistaken about what we perceived. This assumption allows gaslighters to convince victims that their clear perceptions were actually hallucinations or false memories. The fourth tactic is projection and blame shifting. Gaslighters often accuse their victims of doing exactly what they themselves are doing. If they're lying, they'll accuse the victim of being dishonest. If they're manipulating, they'll claim the victim is trying to control them. If they're being abusive, they'll insist the victim is the real abuser. This creates tremendous confusion because it forces victims to defend themselves against accusations that feel completely disconnected from reality. While they're busy proving they're not manipulative or abusive, they're not focusing on the actual manipulation and abuse being directed at them. The fifth tactic is social isolation through reality distortion. Gaslighters often try to convince their victims that other people also see them as unstable, unreliable, or problematic. They might say things like, "Everyone thinks you're overreacting," or "Your friends are worried about you," or even "Your family can see you're not thinking clearly." This isolates victims from potential sources of reality testing and support. If they believe that everyone sees them as unstable, they're less likely to reach out for help or trust outside perspectives that might contradict the gaslighter's version of reality. Understanding how gaslighting operates in different contexts is crucial because the tactics adapt to the environment while the core pattern remains the same. In romantic relationships, gaslighting often starts during the honeymoon phase when the victim's guard is down. The gaslighter might seem incredibly understanding and supportive initially, which makes their later reality distortions more shocking and confusing. They often target their partner's memories of conversations about boundaries, commitments, or problematic behavior. A common pattern is for the gaslighter to make promises or agreements when their partner is upset, then later deny those conversations ever happened. They might promise to change certain behaviors, then insist they never made such promises when confronted about not following through. Over time, the victim stops trusting their own memory of what was agreed upon. In workplace settings, gaslighting often involves denying instructions, deadlines, or feedback that was clearly given. A gaslighting boss might give contradictory instructions, then blame the employee for being confused or not following directions. They might deny having meetings that obviously occurred or claim they never said things that were said in front of witnesses. Workplace gaslighting is particularly damaging because it affects the victim's professional reputation and career prospects. Other colleagues might witness the gaslighting but be reluctant to get involved, leaving the victim feeling isolated and questioning their professional competence. In political contexts, gaslighting operates on a mass scale through the systematic denial of documented facts and the labeling of accurate reporting as fake news or partisan attacks. Political gaslighters might deny making statements that were recorded on video, claim events didn't happen when there's extensive documentation, or insist that widely reported facts are fabrications by opponents. The goal is to create such confusion about what's real and what isn't, that people give up trying to determine objective truth and instead rely on the gaslighter to tell them what to believe. This is how gaslighting can be used to control not just individuals, but entire populations. Family gaslighting often involves rewriting family history or denying traumatic events that occurred. Gaslighting parents might deny abusive behavior, claim that harmful incidents never happened, or insist that the victim is remembering their childhood incorrectly. This is particularly damaging because it prevents victims from processing trauma and developing accurate self-understanding. Now let's talk about why gaslighting is so effective and why victims often don't recognize it until significant damage has been done. First, gaslighting exploits our natural tendency to trust others and assume good faith. Most people can't imagine someone systematically trying to drive them crazy, so they assume that memory discrepancies must be honest mistakes or their own fault. This assumption of good intent allows gaslighters to operate undetected for extended periods. Second, gaslighting gradually erodes confidence rather than attacking it directly. If someone immediately told you that you were crazy or couldn't trust your own mind, you'd probably reject that assessment. But if they consistently introduce small doubts about your memory and perceptions over time, those doubts accumulate until you begin to question your mental reliability. Third, gaslighting often occurs in close relationships where victims are emotionally invested in maintaining the connection. It's easier to doubt yourself than to accept that someone you love or depend on is systematically trying to destabilize your sense of reality. Victims often rationalize gaslighting behavior because acknowledging it would require ending important relationships or making major life changes. Fourth, gaslighting creates what psychologists call learned helplessness. As victims repeatedly experience having their reality denied or distorted, they gradually stop trusting their own perceptions and become dependent on external validation. This makes them more vulnerable to future manipulation and less likely to recognize or resist gaslighting tactics. Fifth, gaslighting often accompanies other forms of manipulation, creating a web of psychological control that's difficult to escape. Victims might be dealing with emotional abuse, financial control, social isolation, or threats, making it even harder to think clearly about their situation or seek help. So how do you protect yourself from gaslighting? The key is developing what psychologists call reality anchoring, maintaining confidence in your own perceptions, and creating systems to verify your experiences. First, trust your initial instincts and emotional reactions. If something feels wrong or confusing, don't immediately assume you're mistaken. Your subconscious mind often detects manipulation before your conscious mind can articulate what's happening. Pay attention to feelings of confusion, self-doubt, or emotional disorientation after interactions with specific people. Second, keep records of important conversations and events. Write down significant interactions, save text messages and emails, and document incidents that seem important. Having written records makes it much harder for gaslighters to deny events or claim they happened differently. Many gaslighting victims report that keeping a journal was crucial for maintaining their sanity and recognizing manipulation patterns. Third, maintain relationships with trusted friends and family members who can provide outside perspectives. Gaslighters often try to isolate their victims from sources of reality testing, so preserving connections with people who knew you before the gaslighting began is crucial. Share your experiences with trustworthy people and ask for their perspectives on situations that seem confusing. Fourth, educate yourself about gaslighting tactics so you can recognize them when they occur. Knowledge is power when dealing with manipulation. The more you understand about how gaslighting works, the less vulnerable you'll be to its effects. Learn to spot the patterns of memory manipulation, emotional invalidation, and reality denial. Fifth, practice asserting your own perceptions and memories. Don't immediately back down when someone challenges your recollection of events. Say things like, "I remember it differently," or "That's not how I experienced it," instead of automatically assuming you must be wrong. Building confidence in your own perceptions is crucial for resisting gaslighting. Sixth, seek professional help if you suspect you're being gaslit. Therapists who understand psychological manipulation can help you sort through confusing experiences and rebuild confidence in your own perceptions. They can also help you develop strategies for dealing with gaslighters and recovering from any psychological damage. Finally, remember that experiencing gaslighting doesn't reflect any weakness or deficiency on your part. Gaslighting is specifically designed to target psychologically healthy traits like trust, empathy, and the assumption of good faith in others. The fact that you're susceptible to gaslighting often means you're a fundamentally decent person who expects others to be honest and trustworthy. Gaslighting is psychological warfare designed to destroy your confidence in your own mind. It's one of the most damaging forms of emotional abuse because it attacks the very foundation of your ability to navigate reality. But understanding how it works is the first step in protecting yourself from its effects. Your memories, perceptions, and emotional reactions are valid. Your sense of reality matters. If someone consistently makes you doubt your own mind, that's not a reflection of your mental instability. It's evidence of their manipulative behavior. Trust yourself, document your experiences, maintain supportive relationships, and remember that healthy interactions don't leave you questioning your sanity. Anyone who systematically undermines your confidence in your own perceptions is not operating in good faith, regardless of how they justify their behavior. Have you experienced gaslighting in your relationships, workplace, or other settings? What tactics have you noticed, and how did you recognize what was happening? Share your experiences in the comments to help others identify and resist manipulation. And if this video helped you understand gaslighting better, subscribe for more content about recognizing and protecting yourself from psychological manipulation.